watching the Housewives of Atlanta. You got to give account of how you handle your time. If Judge Judy controls your life, you got to give an account of how you handle your time. All I want you to realize is that as a steward of everything you have access to, you're a steward of your talents, you're a steward of your time, and a steward of those treasures you have access to. And God, anytime you act like the things you got control over is all about you, you're a foolish steward. You put all your energy, we're gonna take a vacation, and we need to have, it's going to cost us for all of us to fly there. It's going to cost about $1,500, $1,200 for us to go all to fly there, and then we're going to get a cruise, and we're going to pay, about $1,000, a couple $1,000 for $1,000 for the cruise, and we got to have some money to buy some stuff with it, and money to eat with, and it's going to cost us about $3,000. We're going to have a great vacation, $3,000 in 1 week, and you didn't give that much for the whole year to the Lord. What kind of a steward? Controlling something belongs to somebody else, have the audacity to spend all of it on yourself. You are just, he's called a foolish steward. Because here's a steward who handled the master's stuff like it belonged to him. You own absolutely nothing.
Yes, sir.
I told the story, and I told this at 7:30. I'll tell you again that I was in Bermuda that week. We were there, and I counseled with a family, brother and sister in the family of God. They have been working heavily in the marriage ministry, been a blessing there. Had actually lived in Richardson, Texas. They're Bermuda, they're from there, but they lived in Richardson, Texas for a number of years. Had went to Southwestern, began to work with the Richardson Church of Christ there, helping there with the education ministry. Were a blessing in the family of God. Have a son and a daughter that they were raising with them, and their son and daughter were in school, so when the church planned to keep them on, but somehow didn't file the right papers, they had to go back to Bermuda. Well, at this time, their oldest son was about in the 10th, 11th grade, and they had to go back to Bermuda and found themselves on an island only 22 miles long, but even with that, there's gang activity on the island. And their son, who was actually very active in the church, very focused, very centered, now finds himself in an environment and attaches himself to the wrong set of kids. And so he begins to fall into these teenage battles of hanging with the wrong group and getting in trouble at school. And in the last year to school, he had a lot of difficulty. And so they finally got him out of school. In the midst of all that battle, hanging with the wrong people, they sent him to Rhode Island to go there for a short period of time to have a chance to go to a school. That didn't work out for him. He came back home. He left again with some girl dealing drugs, got caught, spent some time in about a year in prison in Canada, and then he came back home. His life had been through turmoil. The family was going through some counseling. Sat down for a counselor, and finally they said this one Friday they met with the counselor, and the son began to open up about his hurts and his frustrations and how he got off track and some bad choices he would make on that Friday. The family had a breakthrough on that Friday. That evening, they was back at home together, son walking around the house talking to mom and dad. They felt, finally, we're on the right path. Finally, it looks like in all that we've been through as a family, we're about to put this thing together. And then a few hours later, he said, I'm going to hang out with some friends, and they got a phone call about 1 o'clock in the morning. He'd been stabbed, dying in the car. Mother said, I ran out the house, and I ran all the way to where my son was dying. I got there, and I traveled in the ambulance all the way to the hospital, and they would not let me see him, and he died. And she said, I don't understand. We gave our lives in service to God. We gave him all that we had. We gave him all the energy, all the time, all the life that we had. And they said, we don't understand, how could God let this happen to us? We serve him. How could he allow my son to die? The father has refocused his life, getting involved in other ministries. The mother, she said, I'm angry at God because he wouldn't. Why did he let this happen to my son? I explained to them that as best I can understand, you got to remember, you're just a steward. You gave birth to this child. That person belonged to to God. I shared with him a story that I'll share with you. I've mentioned before, and I know I've talked to Ernie and Rodney before, but I mentioned to them how as difficult as that is, I have to commend folk when I see their strength. Rodney and Ernie Moore years ago when their baby boy found himself upside down in a bucket and drowned to death. And the idea of that's hard to get your mind around. But I praised them. I even told this couple, and I told Ernie this past week that I talk about y'all all over the world because you can't decide what's going to happen in life. That's right. But you can't decide how to respond to it. Yeah. And in the midst of the hurt and the pain, I was there with them the night the incident happened, and then we talked for the weeks, but identified that I commend them because in light of that loss, they didn't lose their faith in God. They said, well, where is God and how can He let this happen? They understood that in the words of Job, the Lord giveth. If you're going to choose to trust in God, you don't just trust Him when things are going well, when there's money in the bank and everybody pats on the back and everybody love me and it's kumbaya. If you're going to love the Lord and trust the Lord, you got to know how to trust the Lord when things are going bad, when your back's against the wall and you don't know where to turn. And you say, Lord, I don't understand. I don't get it, but I'll trust you anyhow because I don't know where else to go. I want you to understand the necessity of trusting God at all times. Because in the midst of time, you got to understand you are just a steward. Right. All right now. Children are not yours. That mate is not yours. You are not even yours. You're going to have to give an account of how you've handled all the things God gave you access to. That neighbor, I told you for the last time, if you come across my grass one more time, I'm going to shoot you. That ain't even your yard. You believe it's yours, get locked up for 20 years. This man was a foolish steward. Tell somebody, don't be a foolish steward. So be a wise one. The Bible is interesting because Jesus says the man was a foolish steward, but the man was a wise steward. Look at the text. It's amazing when you read the passage. It identifies in chapter 16 chapter. There was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. Here's a man responsible for taking care of your stuff. He's spending your stuff, taking care of himself. That sounds like us, doesn't it? And the Bible says this steward was wise. Wisely wise, preacher. See, the criminal mind is always at work. I don't care. You think you got, right now, we got a building got broken into a couple months ago. We're going to try to increase the security system. But you know what? They got some criminals out there already got a plan. Yeah. Every new system will now, Target has found out, Kmart has found out that the folk have broken into their accounts. But now we got a new security system. There's a criminal already waiting on your new system. I want you to know that folks out there who got the evil folk, people who have a focus and concentration on this world, spend all their time trying to figure out how to get an edge. And every time you got some new level of security or some kind of plan, there are criminals who got a plan with your name on it already. Before the new system come out, they got a plan to break the system before the system gets started. So I want you to understand, you're living inside of a world that does not know God, but at the same time, it's key to understand that in the world that you're living in, Jesus is saying that folk inside this world who got a mindset for the world spend all their time, all their energy, making sure they're prepared for what they want. They got a focus and a concentration that you will not believe. That's why if you work at a prison, the prisoners can sleep. I sometimes have counseled with couples and somebody is dealing with insecurity. When I just feel insecure and I can't rest, you got to understand the person, when your job is security, you don't ever sleep. Because other people got bad intent, you can't watch them all the time. If somebody got a mindset to do something wrong, they're going to do it. Well, my kids, I don't know about my kids. You know, I'm watching y'all. Y'all ain't getting out of my sight. Then we going to get out your sight. Well, all I know, I drop them off at school, watch them go in, I pick them up, I watch them out. They ain't doing nothing wrong. They got bleachers in them schools, they got corners in them schools. Your kids can do whatever they want to do. You cannot watch anybody who's got a bad intent. Understand the reality. Jesus said, folk inside this world who have a concentration for doing wrong will find a way to do wrong. They will increase their opportunity. They spend all their time. They got us clearly sight, focus, and concentration on wrong, and they're going to do the wrong they got a mind to do. So what's his point for us? Well, praise God. Look at verse number 9. He gives the parable. In verse 9 he says this. I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that's money, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. Tell somebody, buy some heavenly friends. Buy some heavenly friends. Jesus is saying, you only have so much access to unrighteous mammon. Unrighteous mammon is money. You only have so much access, he says, to money. Folk in the world put all their energy and every dime they make to recreate money for their own benefit. Jesus said, if you understand what I'm talking about, you only have so much access to money. Take that money to get you some heavenly friends. You need to be setting up some timber, is what he's trying to say. That while you're on side this world, he expects you to take access to the funds you can touch in your hand and use that to invest in something in the future. The child of God begins to realize, therefore, that you're to use every opportunity wisely to take the money that you have and invest it in things that you can't find here. Preacher, you said if I go down to the bank and I get $20,000 and bring it down to the church and give it to the elders, lay it at the elders' feet, that's going to get me into heaven? No. 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 But I'm telling you that he says inside this text that where your heart is, that's where your treasure is. And that when a child of God understands this, that a child of God understands all the finances that God has given me access to. He's given access to it for the sake of me investing that into something that reaches the future for an everlasting connection with God, and not giving up to me to live on this world and put all my time, all my attention, all my cares to make a life here good and soft. I'm supposed to use the funds that God allows me to have access to, invest them back into something that's a blessing for the future. I was talking to Brother Gary Laurie Jr., the third. He said, I've been working with Brother O'Banion and making some money, he said, and I'm hoping to get a little something. He said, when I get it, I want to take, how old is he now, bro? He's 16. He said, when I get that money, I'm hoping to get from Brother O'Banion, working with him. He's expecting that from you. I'm going to take $100 of that, he said. I want to give it toward helping people to make sure they get food. 16. I want to take that which I get and turn around and invest it into somebody else who doesn't have food, because I know what it can be like when sometimes you don't have food. Investing it into the future. God has given me access to finance. I'm going to take some of that I'm invested in souls in the Middle East.